Heute, in dieser Stunde, in diesem Moment bin ich von einem einzigen, alles überragenden Gefühl erfüllt, von dem Gefühl der Dankbarkeit.
On the 26th of September, Germany will say goodbye to Angela Merkel after the federal election. As Chancellor of the European Union's largest country for the past 16 years, she guided Germany through unprecedented crises. She's been labeled the savior of the Eurozone, but accused of having subjugated Southern Europe. She's been called a humanitarian, but a breaker of EU unity during the migration crisis, an environmentalist that exited nuclear energy, and the defender of Europe while being criticized for being too soft on China and Russia. Controversial or conventional, bold or unambitious, these are only some of the words used to describe Mutti, as she is known to Germans. Regardless of the controversies of her rule, her departure will mark a turning point for Germany and will resonate across Europe, leaving her successor to deal with her legacy. The election within the EU's largest economic power and driving force is set to have important consequences on the European stage. With a busy field and her party successor facing a challenge, the 2021 Bundestag election is now shaping itself around continuing or challenging Merkel's legacy. Angela Merkel has been the face of Germany since 2005. In each of the 4 elections that she won, she placed herself and her party, the CDU-CSU, at the center. Her consensus building has allowed her to build successive coalitions, governing both with the Social Democrat SPD and the Liberal FDP at different times. Thanks to her political flair, Merkel stayed ahead of public opinion. She navigated crises, both at the national and European level, balancing between different interests and ultimately picking the winning side. She initially supported nuclear energy before performing a U-turn in phasing out nuclear plants after public outcry over the Fukushima disaster in 2011. Similarly, during the 2015 refugee crisis, she opened Germany's doors to nearly 1 million immigrants from the Middle East. She defended this decision using her famous statement, "Wir schaffen das," "We can do it." After public opinion shifted, Merkel went back on her decision by limiting immigration. This decision altered the political landscape, contributing to the rise of the nationalist and anti-immigration Alternative für Deutschland, at the cost of the traditional left and right parties. German politics and society have since been polarized and divided on immigration, and Merkel was often blamed at anti-immigration protests. At the European level, Merkel had to strike a balance between German and broader European interests. In both the Eurozone crisis in 2010 and the 2020 Corona Recovery Fund, Merkel was initially reluctant to help due to the costs it would put on the German economy, yet in both cases, she stepped in. In the Eurozone crisis, the Euro's future was in danger, prompting Germany's leading role in providing bailout packages to Greece, Italy, Portugal, and Spain, conditional on large budget cuts. For the Recovery Fund, Merkel led Germany to accept common European debt, which the country had always opposed. The Eurozone crisis measures have also been criticized for imposing German austerity and its economic model on the rest of the EU. The resulting high unemployment and shrinking economies saw large protests against her in Southern Europe. But while Merkel's financial support in difficult times has been pro-EU, her foreign policy towards Russia and China has raised questions. While she has been a strong advocate of human rights, her legacy is undermined by the trade deals with authoritarian and repressive governments. Despite a tough line and sanctions following Russia's annexation of Crimea and concerns about the poisoning of Alexei Navalny, Merkel continued the development of Nord Stream 2, a gas pipeline between Germany and Russia. With regards to China, she initially allowed Chinese technology to be used in Germany despite spying concerns, and she has been one of the main proponents of the recent EU-China investment agreement, despite human rights violations in Xinjiang. But now, after 16 years in power, Germany's approach to tackling these challenges and their European implications are being re-evaluated. Germany's 2 traditional parties are the conservative CDU, led by Armin Laschet, who's been called Merkel's continuity candidate, and the Social Democratic SPD, led by Finance Minister Olaf Scholz. While they were historically dominant, their share of the vote has decreased as other issues gained prominence over the past 10 years. This has led to the growth and the emergence of the nationalist and anti-immigration AfD, which is shunned from government by other political parties, and the Greens, led by Annalena Baerbock, whose policies are centered around more ambitious climate action. The remaining 2 parties are the center-right and liberal FDP and Die Linke, or the left, the left-wing party often seen as too radical by the other parties to govern with. These 6 parties are now competing in an election that is driven by 3 main issues, which put into question the more divisive elements of Angela Merkel's legacy. These are shaping around the speed of Germany's green transition, the question of public spending, and Germany's role in foreign policy. Climate change is a key election topic for many voters, and while Merkel has been dubbed the climate chancellor due to her outspokenness on the issue, she has balanced climate change with preserving Germany's industrial interests, and her chancellorship has seen Germany lagging behind its environmental targets. Now the issue is set to take center stage. The CDU is set to continue Merkel's approach, and the liberal FDP is centered around free market approaches while expanding emissions trading. According to both, climate protection should be fair and affordable without leading to job losses and economic fallout. The Greens are challenging the status quo, calling for more ambitious measures and a new economic model based on green industrial policies. Similarly, the SDP's goal of achieving a carbon-neutral economy by 2045 stands out as a key point in the election. A left-wing electoral victory would likely result in a more ambitious policy and more German leadership on climate change. A right-wing victory, on the other hand, would likely prolong balancing between industry and climate. The second issue is austerity and public spending. Although national debt has risen to combat the consequences of the pandemic, German commitment to the Schwarze Null, Black Zero, which means balanced budgets, is enshrined in German political culture and written in the constitution. How the next government will undertake public spending will be consequential for Germany's economic recovery, climate change, and infrastructure. For the CDU and FDP, restoring balanced budgets and limiting national debt is a top priority. The SPD wants to pursue a higher level of public investment, although agrees that the budget deficit should remain to the constitutional limit. The Green Party is challenging that standpoint, claiming that deficits are not that bad. The Greens want to alter the constitutional deficit rule to spend at least 50 billion euros annually with debt. The third topic in the election is Germany's foreign policy. The CDU and SPD are likely to follow in Merkel's footsteps, expanding economic opportunities with Russia and China. The SPD has in recent years shifted towards a softer stance on Russia, as relations and dialogue between the two countries became of the highest importance. The Greens, however, pursue a value-based foreign policy based on human rights and democracy. They have criticized Merkel's Russia and China approach with regards to the human rights violations taking place there. The parties also disagree on their commitment to NATO, with the FDP and CDU pushing to comply with the alliance's rule to spend 2% of GDP on defense, while the SDP and the Greens do not wish to make such a commitment. With the important role that Germany has on international relations and its economic weight inside the EU, the coming elections will have a ripple effect to the rest of the continent, whether it chooses to follow Merkel's legacy or steer away from it. Throughout her rule, Angela Merkel consistently tried to remain in the center, and with no party large enough to win a majority on its own, a new coalition would mean a new center and a rewriting of the German status quo. This was Into Europe. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for the latest updates and analysis on European news.